Hey guys, Jules here. Happy Thursday. Thursday means it's time for another installment of our favorite series, which Joe kicked off for us last week. If you haven't seen his video, go back and watch it. It's a good one, talking about one of his favorite stories from the Bible. And now, this week, I'm up. It's time for me to share one of my favorite stories from Scripture. In this one, coming from John chapter 20, it involves one of my favorite people from Scripture, Mary Magdalene, and one of probably, the ultimate moment of Scripture, the biggest event, which is the resurrection. Now, I'm a firm believer that the resurrection isn't only for Easter. I think a lot of times as Christians, I totally understand where this comes from, but it's really easy for us to get stuck on the death part of Jesus's remaining days on earth. And it's really easy to look at the sacrifice, his willingness to go to the cross. And it's hard for us to wrap our heads around how God could love us so much that he would go to the cross in Jesus for us. So I understand why we get stuck there a little bit. It's definitely something to look at. But that's not where the story ends, right? Then Jesus is resurrected. And that's where we get hope, and that's where we get transformed life and all of this really, really cool stuff. This resurrection means there's new life for us as well. So with that, we're going to start looking at John chapter 20, and we'll just kind of walk through it and see what Mary Magdalene does here, learn a little bit more about her. Let's get into it. So this is John chapter 20. It says, "Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, 'They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him.' Then Peter and the other disciple set out and went toward the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down to look in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb. He saw the linen wrappings there, and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head, not lying with the linen wrappings, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple, who reached the tomb first, also went in, and he saw and believed, for as yet they did not understand the scripture, that he must rise from the dead. Then the disciples returned to their homes." So we know the story of Jesus' death, right? We talk about that a lot, like I said. So Mary Magdalene and the disciples, all these people had just witnessed that and experienced that. The death of someone that they had a connection with, that they loved. Little backstory with Mary Magdalene. There's a lot of folklore around her. No, not the Taylor Swift album. But there are a lot of, stories and rumors about her. One of them being, Mary Magdalene was this prostitute, and then she came to follow Jesus, and then she was there to witness the tomb. That is what it is. It's a rumor. That's not exactly her story. So the thing about her being a prostitute, and this is how her life was transformed, that came much later from a Pope Gregory the Great, who just kind of said that one day. Really, Mary Magdalene can be mapped back to the woman who had demons cast out of her. Maybe you've heard that story. So she was the recipient of one of Jesus's miracles. So she has this deep connection with him. So I would imagine she's going to the tomb to feel productive, to be close to her Jesus again, to mourn, maybe to, stomp and scream with anger. We don't really know what she's doing there. But imagine her confusion and frustration and bewilderment when Jesus isn't there. And she's all by herself at the time, seeing that Jesus isn't there and has to go tell everybody. So she tells some of the disciples, and they come and they kind of are putting the pieces together. Then they go home. I don't know about you, but I would have a really tough time just going home after witnessing this. And that's not what Mary Magdalene does. So it goes on here in verse 11. But Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw 2 angels in white sitting where the body of Jesus had been lying, one at the head and the other at the feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." When she said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, "Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father, but go to my brothers and sisters and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord," and she told them that he had said these things to her. So this story cuts back to Mary. She has not gone home. She's still trying to work through this. She's weeping, she's upset. And then she sees angels. And then this guy comes into the picture and starts talking to her, all to find out that it's Jesus. And she is witnessing the transformed Jesus before he ascends to the Father. And Jesus entrusts her with this message to take back to everybody. She is this first witness of the resurrected Christ, which is wild. She's from a small fishing town. She's a Galilean. She had received one of his miracles, but now she, not one of the disciples, maybe because they had a rocky road with Jesus sometimes. They didn't always get what he was doing. But Jesus trusts her with this message to take back to everyone, which blows my mind. She's a really unexpected person to take on this task. And this story, to me, means that the unexpected people in our lives, the people who are maybe on the fringes, maybe the people who we look over, that we're all guilty of doing, myself included, that those people are set out with purpose by God as well. That God has entrusted them with something as well. And sometimes we get too caught up in ourselves or in our expectations that we don't take a look at the people around us. We're not really present with them in that way to see what God is doing in their lives. And in this moment, Jesus is showing her what God is doing in our lives. God is transforming us. God took life and death and flipped it around completely and said, "Mary Magdalene, I need you to go tell everyone about this." She had to witness that, to attest to that. And that's what God is doing in our lives, in our hearts, constantly, whether we know it or not. But when we really take a look at it and see the ways in which God is transforming us, it's baffling. And it's also so necessary in ways that we can't even really think of, right? We look around right now and there's so much hurt and there's so much brokenness and there's so much hatred. And then we can come back to the resurrection and say, out of death and destruction, Jesus transformed everything. And Mary Magdalene was the first person to witness that. It's definitely humbling to me. It blows my mind every time. I know that's a lot to take in, so we'll stop there. But next week we'll have somebody else sharing a story with all of you. And I would encourage you to think about your own favorite stories from the Bible. What really resonates with you guys? All right, until next time, bye guys.